Emperor Nero, born Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, and later known as Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, is one of ancient Rome's most infamous rulers. His reign from 54 to 68 AD was marked by lavish spending, monumental architecture, and a series of events that would forever cast him as a tyrant in the annals of history. Hello everyone, welcome to Grimoire of Myths. Today we will take a deep dive into the life and exploits of the Roman Emperor Nero, the last emperor of the Julio-Claudian Roman dynasty. Now let's begin. Born on December 15, 37 AD, Nero was the son of Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus and Agrippina the Younger, a sister of Emperor Caligula. His rise to power was orchestrated by Agrippina, who married her uncle, Emperor Claudius, and persuaded him to adopt Nero as his son and heir, sidelining his own son Britannicus. Nero became emperor at the tender age of 17, following Claudius's suspicious death in 54 AD, which many historians believe was orchestrated by Agrippina. The ancient biographer Suetonius, who was critical of Nero's ancestors, wrote that Emperor Augustus had reproached Nero's grandfather for his unseemly enjoyment of violent gladiator games. According to Jürgen Malitz, Suetonius tells that Nero's father was known to be irascible and brutal, and that both enjoyed chariot races and theatre performances to a degree not befitting their position. Suetonius also mentions that when Nero's father, Domitius, was congratulated by his friends for the birth of his son, he replied that any child born to him and Agrippina would have a detestable nature and become a public danger. Domitius died in AD 41. A few years before his father's death, his father was involved in a serious political scandal. His mother and his two surviving sisters, Agrippina and Julia Livilla, were exiled to a remote island in the Mediterranean Sea. His mother was said to have been exiled for plotting to overthrow the Emperor Caligula. Nero's inheritance was taken from him, and he was sent to live with his paternal aunt Domitia Lepida, the mother of later Emperor Claudius's third wife Messalina. After Caligula's death, Claudius became the new emperor. Nero's mother married Claudius in AD 49, becoming his fourth wife. On 25 February AD 50, Claudius was pressured to adopt Nero as his son, giving him the new name of Nero Claudius Caesar Drusus Germanicus. Claudius had gold coins issued to mark the adoption. Initially, Nero's rule showed promise. He was guided by advisors like Seneca the Younger and the Praetorian prefect Burrus. Early in his reign, Nero was known for his populist policies, including reducing taxes and increasing public welfare. He was also an enthusiastic patron of the arts and initiated an extensive building program, including the construction of various temples and theatres. Nero's practical contributions to Rome's governance focused on diplomacy, trade, and culture. He ordered the construction of amphitheatres and promoted athletic games and contests. He made public appearances as an actor, poet, musician, and charioteer, which scandalized his aristocratic contemporaries, as these occupations were usually the domain of slaves, public entertainers, and infamous persons. The provision of such entertainment made Nero popular among lower-class citizens, but his performances undermined the imperial dignity. The costs involved were borne by local elites either directly or through taxation, and were much resented by the Roman aristocracy. The Great Fire of Rome began on the night of 18th to 19th July 64, probably in one of the merchant shops on the slope of the Aventine, overlooking the Circus Maximus, or in the wooden outer seating of the circus itself. Rome had always been vulnerable to fires, and this one was fanned to catastrophic proportions by the winds. Tacitus, Cassius Dio, and modern archaeology describe the destruction of mansions, ordinary residences, public buildings, and temples on the Aventine, Palatine, and Caelian hills. The fire burned for over 7 days before subsiding. It then started again and burned for 3 more. It destroyed 3 of Rome's 14 districts and severely damaged 7 more. Some Romans thought the fire an accident, as the merchant shops were timber-framed and sold flammable goods, and the outer seating stands of the circus were timber-built. Others claimed it was arson committed on Nero's behalf. The accounts by Pliny the Elder, Suetonius, and Cassius Dio suggest several possible reasons for Nero's alleged arson, including his creation of a real-life backdrop to a theatrical performance about the burning of Troy. Suetonius wrote that Nero started the fire to clear the site for his planned palatial golden house. This would include lush artificial landscapes and a 30-meter-tall statue of himself, the Colossus of Nero, sited more or less where the Colosseum would eventually be built. Suetonius and Cassius Dio claim that Nero sang the Sack of Ilium in stage costume while the city burned. The popular legend that Nero played the fiddle while Rome burned is at least partly a literary construct of Flavian propaganda, which looked askance on the abortive Neronian attempt to rewrite Augustan models of rule. Tacitus suspends judgment on Nero's responsibility for the fire. He found that Nero was in Antium when the fire started, and returned to Rome to organize a relief effort, providing for the removal of bodies and debris, which he paid for from his own funds. After the fire, Nero opened his palaces to provide shelter for the homeless and arranged for food supplies to be delivered in order to prevent starvation among the survivors. Tacitus writes that to remove suspicion from himself, Nero accused Christians of starting the fire. According to this account, many Christians were arrested and brutally executed by being thrown to the beasts, crucified, and being burned alive. Tacitus asserts that in his imposition of such ferocious punishments, Nero was not motivated by a sense of justice, but by a penchant for personal cruelty. Houses built after the fire were spaced out, built in brick, and faced by porticos on wide roads. Nero also built himself a new palace complex known as the Domus Aurea in an area cleared by the fire. The cost to rebuild Rome was immense, requiring funds the state treasury did not have. To find the necessary funds for the reconstruction, Nero's government increased taxation. Particularly heavy tributes were imposed on the provinces of the empire. To meet at least a portion of the costs, Nero devalued the Roman currency, increasing inflationary pressure for the first time in the empire's history. In March 68, Gaius Julius Vindex, the governor of Gallia Lugdunensis, rebelled against Nero's tax policies. Lucius Virginius Rufus, the governor of Germania Superior, was ordered to put down Vindex's rebellion. In an attempt to gain support from outside his own province, Vindex called upon Servius Sulpicius Galba, the governor of Hispania Tarraconensis, to join the rebellion and to declare himself emperor in opposition to Nero. At the Battle of Vesontio in May 68, Virginius's forces easily defeated those of Vindex, and the latter committed suicide. However, after defeating the rebel, Virginius's legions attempted to proclaim their own commander as emperor. Virginius refused to act against Nero, but the discontent of the legions of Germania and the continued opposition of Galba in Hispania did not bode well for him. While Nero had retained some control of the situation, support for Galba increased, despite his being officially declared a public enemy. The prefect of the Praetorian Guard, Gaius Nymphidius Sabinus, also abandoned his allegiance to the emperor and came out in support of Galba. In response, Nero fled Rome to go to the port of Ostia, and from there to take a fleet to one of the still loyal eastern provinces. According to Suetonius, Nero abandoned the idea when some army officers openly refused to obey his commands, responding with a line from Virgil's Aeneid, "Is it so dreadful a thing then to die?" Nero then toyed with the idea of fleeing to Parthia, throwing himself upon the mercy of Galba, or appealing to the people and begging them to pardon him for his past offenses, and if he could not soften their hearts, to entreat them at least to allow him the prefecture of Egypt. Suetonius reports that the text of this speech was later found in Nero's writing desk, but that he dared not give it, for fear of being torn to pieces before he could reach the Forum. Nero returned to Rome and spent the evening in the palace. After sleeping, he awoke at about midnight to find the palace guard had left. Dispatching messages to his friends' palace chambers for them to come, he received no answers. Upon going to their chambers personally, he found them all abandoned. When he called for a gladiator or anyone else adept with a sword to kill him, no one appeared. He cried, "Have I neither friend nor foe?" and ran out as if to throw himself into the Tiber. Returning, Nero sought a place where he could hide and collect his thoughts. An imperial freedman, Phaon, offered his villa, located 4 miles outside the city. Traveling in disguise, Nero and 4 loyal freedmen, Epaphroditus, Phaon, Neophytus, and Sporus, reached the villa, where Nero ordered them to dig a grave for him. At this time, Nero learned that the senator had declared him a public enemy. Nero prepared himself for suicide, pacing up and down, muttering, "Qualis artifex pereo," what an artist the world is losing. Losing his nerve, he begged one of his companions to set an example by killing himself first. At last, the sound of approaching horsemen drove Nero to face the end. However, he still could not bring himself to take his own life, but instead forced his private secretary, Epaphroditus, to perform the task. When one of the horsemen entered and saw that Nero was dying, he attempted to stop the bleeding, but efforts to save Nero's life were unsuccessful. He died on 9th of June 68, the anniversary of the death of his first wife, Claudia Octavia, and was buried in the mausoleum of the Domiti Ahenobarbi in what is now the Pincian Hill area of Rome. According to Sulpicius Severus, it is unclear whether Nero took his own life. With his death, the Julio-Claudian dynasty ended. The 5th Roman emperor necessitates a synthesis of his complex legacy, marked by artistic achievements, architectural innovations, and controversial governance. Nero's reign from 54 to 68 AD was characterized by vast cultural contributions, including the promotion of theatrical and musical performances, which underscored his personal artistic inclinations. His ambitious urban development projects, most notably the Domus Aurea, illustrated a commitment to architectural grandeur despite the financial strain it placed on the empire's economy. However, Nero's legacy is predominantly overshadowed by accusations of tyranny, the infamous Great Fire of Rome, for which he was widely blamed, though historical accounts challenge the accuracy of this accusation, and the persecution of Christians, painting a portrait of a ruler with a penchant for cruelty and extravagance. His eventual downfall, culminating in his suicide to avoid a Senate-imposed death sentence, marked the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty and left a lasting imprint on Roman history. In reflecting upon Nero's reign, it is crucial to navigate the fine line between the historical and the sensational, acknowledging both his contributions to Roman culture and his alleged despotic rule. Nero's story serves as a powerful reminder of the complexities of power, the often precarious relationship between a leader and their people, and how history is recorded and remembered. As such, Nero remains a figure of enduring fascination and debate, embodying the paradoxes of human nature and leadership. Emperor Nero remains one of history's most enigmatic figures. His life and rule over the Roman Empire were filled with contradictions. A ruler who was both loved and loathed, a patron of the arts who was also a brutal persecutor, and a populist who was extravagantly self-indulgent. That's it for today. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Until next time, farewell.